Imagine if I told you that a single habit, something you probably do every morning without even thinking, could quietly shorten your life by years. And if you stopped doing it, you could not only increase your chances of living past 90, but also add up to a decade of healthier, more vibrant living. Now, picture this. You wake up, shuffle to the kitchen, and reach for the same breakfast you've been having for years. It feels comforting, maybe even nostalgic. But what if I told you that this routine is like pouring sand into your car's gas tank? It looks harmless, but inside it slowly grinds the engine down. And here's the promise I'll make to you. If you stay with me for the next 15 minutes, you'll discover what that morning mistake really is, the science behind why it harms seniors, and the small, realistic swaps that could give your body back the energy and strength you thought you'd lost forever. Before we dive in, though, do me one favor. Hit that subscribe button. That way, you'll never miss the kind of evidence-based tips that can help you sleep better, feel stronger, and yes, maybe even help you live those extra 10 years we all hope for. You know what fascinates me? Most of my patients over 60 begin their day in almost the exact same way. It feels harmless, even comforting. But when we track their health, their energy, their memory, even their blood pressure, one pattern keeps showing up. Research from the National Institute on Aging found that seniors who repeat the same high-sugar, low-protein breakfast are twice as likely to face midday fatigue and blood sugar swings. Twice as likely. And that's just the short-term effect. The long-term consequences are even more concerning. So let me ask you, could it be that one of your most ordinary morning habits is the very thing holding you back from living past 90? Tell me in the comments, what's the first thing you usually reach for in the morning? You might be wondering, who is this man telling me to stop doing something every morning if I want to live past 90? Well, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Dr. Jonathan Miller. For over 30 years, I've been a geriatric physician working side by side with older adults, people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and yes, even many who lived well into their 90s. I've walked with them through hospital corridors, sat at their kitchen tables, and listened to their quiet fears about growing older. And here's something I've noticed time and time again. The difference between the patients who barely made it to 80 and the ones who thrived into their 90s and beyond wasn't just genetics or luck or fancy medications. It was their habits, the small choices they made every single day, especially first thing in the morning. Why does the morning matter so much? Because it sets the rhythm. Just like the opening bars of a song decide the mood for the rest of the piece, your first choices after waking decide how your body will handle the hours ahead. Over 3 decades, I've seen how one repeated mistake in the morning can quietly steal away years of life, and how one small adjustment can add them back. That's why I care so deeply about today's topic. This isn't theory. It's not a scare tactic. It's the distilled lesson of thousands of patient stories, hundreds of studies, and decades of watching lives unfold. And to make this real for you, let me share the story of one patient who struggled until she discovered the power of changing just one morning habit. Not long ago, I met Harold, a 74-year-old retired carpenter. Strong hands, steady eyes, the kind of man who built his own home and never liked asking for help. But lately he found himself waking up tired. By mid-morning, he felt sluggish, his knees stiff, and his memory not as sharp as it used to be. Harold told me, "Doc, I don't get it. I eat breakfast every day. I'm doing what I was taught was healthy, but I still feel worn out before the day even begins." He tried vitamins, he tried walking more. He even cut back on late-night TV so he could get better sleep. Nothing worked. His mornings still left him drained. And then during one of our visits, I asked him a simple question. What exactly do you eat first thing in the morning? His answer shocked me. Not because it was unusual, but because it was exactly what so many of my patients say. The routine felt harmless, ordinary. The same thing millions of older Americans are doing right now, this very morning. But it was quietly undermining his energy, his joints, even his heart health. Have you or someone you love gone through something similar, waking up thinking you've done everything right, but still feeling like the day is already stacked against you? Hold on to that thought. because in just a moment, I'll reveal what Harold was doing each morning that was slowly working against him, and what happened when he finally made a change. Close your eyes for a moment and picture your body as a finely tuned clock. Every morning you wind it up, not with gears, but with fuel. The first thing you feed it is the little turn of the key that keeps the whole mechanism running for the next 24 hours. Now imagine putting sand into that keyhole. It still turns, but the movement becomes gritty. Over time, the gears wear faster. That image is harsh, but it's useful. The most common and most overlooked morning habit that acts like that sand is starting the day with rapidly absorbed sugars and refined carbohydrates. White bagels, sugary cereals, many pastries, and yes, even a seemingly healthy glass of orange juice. These foods push your system into a fast, repetitive cycle of blood sugar spikes and crashes. The short story: spikes equals stress on blood vessels, inflammation, and metabolic wear and tear that add up year after year. The longer story follows. Let's look at the mechanics, not as jargon, but as plain cause and effect. What happens when you eat a high-sugar, refined carb breakfast? Rapidly absorbed carbs send glucose into your bloodstream quickly. Your pancreas answers by releasing insulin to clear that sugar. That fast cleanup causes two problems. First, a quick energy surge followed by a mid-morning crash. Repeated cycles of high insulin encourage insulin resistance and visceral fat over months and years. Clinically, that shows up as rising fasting glucose, creeping waist circumference, and higher blood pressure in many older adults. Controlled feeding studies show that high GI, low-fiber breakfasts produce worse glucose, insulin, and appetite hormone responses than lower GI, higher fiber options. The physiology is immediate and measurable. Why morning matters more than you'd expect. The first meal helps set hormonal rhythms for the day: insulin, cortisol, ghrelin, the hunger hormone, and it affects how well you metabolize later meals. Repeated morning spikes are not just short-term tiredness. Over years, epidemiologic studies link high daily intake of rapidly absorbed sugars and sweetened drinks to higher rates of type 2 diabetes and metabolic disease. For instance, major pooled analyses report roughly an 18% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes for each daily serving of sugar-sweetened beverages, a striking population-level effect. Don't be misled by juice, smoothies, or fruit drinks. A cup, 240 milliliters of 100% orange juice, commonly contains about 20 to 26 grams of sugar, comparable to a soft drink and far more concentrated than eating the whole orange because the fiber is gone. That sugar behaves like other free sugars in beverages. It raises blood glucose quickly because there's little to slow absorption. If you think a glass of juice is a harmless health habit, the numbers say otherwise. Eat the whole fruit when you can. The fiber makes a real metabolic difference. Worrying links to brain health and aging. This isn't only about diabetes or the scale. Emerging research ties high glycemic diets to markers associated with Alzheimer's pathology. One study in older adults found that higher intake of high glycemic foods correlated with greater cerebral amyloid burden, a biological hallmark we watch closely in cognitive aging. In other words, the food that slams your blood sugar may also nudge processes tied to memory decline. That's a heavy idea, but it explains why morning fuel matters for brain longevity, not just weight. So, what to do? Here are concrete, science-backed substitutions and exact portion guidance you can start using tomorrow morning. These are not rules. They're practical alternatives that change those physiological responses. Practical, evidence-backed morning swaps and why they work. Swap juice for whole fruit or water. Why? Fiber in whole fruit slows sugar absorption. Water avoids the sugar entirely. How much? 1 medium orange or a handful of berries instead of 1 cup juice. 1 cup of OJ, 20 to 26 grams sugar. An orange has the same sugar but with fiber that blunts the spike. Replace a white bagel or sugary cereal with a whole grain option. Why? Whole grains have fiber and lower glycemic load. They reduce postprandial glucose and are linked to lower cardiovascular events. How much? Half to 1 cup cooked steel-cut oats or 1 slice 100% whole grain bread. Aim for at least 3 gram fiber per slice. Studies show higher whole grain intake is associated with about a 20-25% lower risk of cardiovascular events in cohort analyses. Include a palm-sized portion, 3 to 4 ounces of lean protein at breakfast. Why? Protein stabilizes blood sugar, preserves muscle, vital after 60, and reduces mid-morning hunger. How much? 3 to 4 ounces of eggs, yogurt, Greek unsweetened smoked salmon, or a half cup cooked legumes. For older adults, experts recommend daily protein intakes of kilo to 1.2 gram per kilogram body weight, so distribute protein across meals rather than saving most for dinner. Skip fried breakfast frequently. Choose baked or grilled. Why? Frequent fried foods are linked to higher cardiovascular mortality, partly from oxidized fats and inflammation. How much/frequency? Reserve fried items as an occasional treat. Make the default baked, poached, or air fried. A short example morning plate that follows these rules. Half cup cooked steel-cut oats, topped with a tablespoon of nut butter and a few berries. 1 boiled egg or quarter cup plain Greek yogurt unsweetened, water, black coffee, or unsweetened tea. That plate slows the glucose curve, gives 15 to 25 gram protein across breakfast, and sets up a calmer metabolic day. A quick question to you. Which of these swaps feels doable for tomorrow morning? Say it in the comments. I'll swap for. Making that tiny public promise works better than vague intentions. Before I close this section, a word on pace. Change doesn't need to be all at once. Harold didn't flip his life overnight. He started by cutting juice and adding 1 protein serving. Within 2 weeks, his mid-morning crashes eased. 3 months later, his fasting glucose and energy reports improved. In the next section, I'll show Harold's numbers and the specific timeline of his improvement. Real data you can use as a model. So let's step back and remind ourselves what we've uncovered. The simple act of starting the day with refined carbs and sugar, bagels, jams, sweet juices, sounds innocent, but over years it wears down your body the way sand grinds away at the gears of a clock. We saw how it spikes blood sugar, strains blood vessels, clouds memory, and quietly shortens life expectancy. Now think of the alternatives we discussed: whole grains, lean proteins, whole fruits, and water. These aren't exotic superfoods. They're everyday choices that release energy slowly, protect your heart, and keep your brain sharper. They change the day before it even begins. But what does that look like in real life? Let's go back to Harold. At our first checkup after he made the switch, 2 weeks in, he noticed something small but important. He didn't need that mid-morning nap anymore. Instead of dragging himself to the recliner at 10 a.m., he was able to work in his garden until lunch. 3 months later, his lab results confirmed what his body was already telling him. His fasting glucose had dropped from 112 milligrams of prodinolone to 98 listed. His HbA1c, a marker of average blood sugar, nudged down from 6.1% to 5.7%, moving him out of the pre-diabetes zone. He had lost nearly 8 pounds, mostly around his waist, and his blood pressure numbers were steadier. But the most meaningful change, he told me, "Doc, I feel like myself again. I can play with my grandkids without needing to sit down every 10 minutes." That is the real promise here. These aren't abstract numbers on a chart. They are years of energy, clarity, and independence you can reclaim, years that bring you closer to celebrating your 90th birthday and beyond. And I want to pause here to ask you, after hearing Harold's journey, do you feel ready to make a commitment of your own? Could you picture yourself choosing water over juice tomorrow or reaching for oats instead of white toast? If your answer is yes, I encourage you to write it in the comments. Tell me one change you're committing to this week. That simple act of writing it down can be the first step in keeping that promise to yourself. Because if Harold could do it, a man set in his routines for over 70 years, then so can you. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you. What's been your biggest challenge when it comes to mornings? Is it sugar cravings, low energy, or just the comfort of routine? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might be the encouragement someone else needs to start their own change. And if today's message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with a friend or family member who could use a little nudge toward healthier mornings. Most importantly, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on the bell. That way, you won't miss my next tip on healthy aging, advice that can help you stay strong, independent, and thriving well into your 80s and 90s. This is Dr. Jonathan Miller. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, take care of yourself. And remember, small choices each morning can add up to years of life well lived.